Hello again. Today we're back and we're in Esther 5. If you remember, chapter 1, we had King Xerxes decided that Queen Vashti was no longer his queen. In chapter 2, he chose Esther to be his new queen. In chapter 3, we learn about Haman, not a good guy, who hated the Jewish people and decided that he needed to kill all the Jewish people because he hated one whose name was Mordecai. In chapter 4, we talked about Mordecai was humbled himself before God and basically went to Esther and said, you got to help with this one. So Esther is now asking people to pray because she's going to go before the king. And if the king does not put his scepter out to her, that will be the end of Queen Esther. So they prayed for 3 days, they've fasted, they've done all that they can to prepare their hearts and to ask God to help intervene. And then that's where we take up the story today. So in chapter 5, Esther goes before the king, and when she goes before him, he's surprised to see her because it's been over a month since he has even talked to her. But when he is sitting there, it says he saw Queen Esther standing in the court, and he was pleased with her and held out his gold scepter, so his long staff scepter, held out the scepter out in his hands, which meant she was safe. So she went before him and she touched the end of the scepter, and he said, what is it that you want, Queen Esther? What is your request? I will give you even half of my kingdom. In other words, you are just so amazing. I will give you half of everything I have. And she said, if it pleases the king, let the king, together with Haman, dun 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 dun, the bad guy, come today to a banquet I have prepared for him. And so bring Haman at once, the king said, so that we may do what Esther asks. So the king and Haman went to the banquet Esther had prepared, and they were drinking wine, and the king again asked, if it pleases your majesty, sorry, too many pages there. If it pleases, what is your petition? It will be given to you, whatever you want, up to half of my kingdom. And Esther replied, my petition and my request is this. If the king regards me with favor and is pleased with me, please grant my petition, and you and Haman come back tomorrow to have a banquet again, and then I'll tell you what I need. But give me until tomorrow to tell you what's going to happen. So Haman went out, and he was feeling pretty good because he was the only one asked to come to this private dinner with the king and the queen. So he's thinking pretty good, but then he sees Mordecai and decides he hates Mordecai, and he so has to do something against him. So he goes home and he's telling his wife and about all these things. It's like, I hate Mordecai, I hate. And she said, didn't you just go to a banquet with the king and the queen? Don't worry about Mordecai. You don't have to worry about him at all. But guys, we know that that's not how it works, right? When we're working with God, God has it all planned, and that sometimes when we think that we're in charge and we think we've got everything under control, that's when God says, I have something else in mind. You need to trust me. So we're going to find out next week what happens, because Haman was so mad at Mordecai that he decided he was going to go ask that he could go kill Mordecai, that he could just wipe him out. And he was going to ask the king's special permission. So we're going to stop right there and see what happens next time with Mordecai and with Haman, because again, the story continues. Now, as it continues, I wanted you to be able to make a golden scepter like the king. So if you take the long piece of paper that's in your kit, and if you roll it up long ways to make it as long as you can, what I did is you can actually make a little mark where it comes around, and if you want to decorate it, you can figure out how big it is and decorate the part that's going to show with drawings or whatever you want. And then once you get ready to put it together, you have this long piece of gold, and if you just pull the backing off, you can use this as tape to tape it together so that way it will stay together. So here's mine, I'll show you. So I just taped it together here, and then I gave you some jewels and some other things to make it nice and bright and shiny. It's the scepter. Because remember that when Esther went before the king, he held out a scepter to it and said, come into my presence. Guys, we have a king that always wants us to come into his presence too, and that's Jesus and God. And he's always saying, anytime you want to come into my presence, you are welcome to come and talk to me and pray with me and learn about me, because I love you. Oh, and our snack sorry, almost forgot our snack today. You have either chips or you have these Cheetos. So I thought the Cheetos sort of reminded me of a scepter, and these sort of remind me of the edicts, like the laws and stuff that the king writes. So whether you got laws or whether you got the scepters, you can sort of act out the story with your snack too. So enjoy, and we'll see you next week and find out more about what's happening with Haman and Mordecai.